Hello, everybody.
Hello, Eric.
Hello, Eric.
Good. All right. Well, thank you, everybody, for joining us. It is 1:30. So with the time being 1:30, like I said, I'll call the September 22nd, 2021 STRGBA GSA TAC meeting to order. Thanks for joining us on the phone. I can see we have Michael Renfro from the city of Oakdale, Miguel Alvarez from the city of Modesto. See Walt Ward from Stanislaus County. Not seeing Chad. I see Gordon and Jennifer from MID, Samantha as well. Thanks for joining us. Chad will probably join us here momentarily. Got myself from Oakdale Irrigation District, Eric Thorburn. City of Waterford, Mike Pitcock, welcome. And I'm not seeing Michael Riddell yet, but we have a quorum, so let's get started. So item number 2, business from the public. At this time, interested persons are welcome to introduce any topic within the agency's jurisdiction. Matters presented under this heading may be discussed, but no action will be taken by the agency at this meeting. So I'll open it up to the public. Business from the public. Okay, hearing none. Seeing no hands raised. We will move right on to item number 3, which is the September 8th, 2021 meeting minutes. Assuming that everybody's had a chance to review those meeting minutes, I will entertain a motion.
Renfro motion.
Thank you, Renfro.
Second,
Mr.
Eric.
Walt, second.
Second from Walt, thank you. So are there any comments from the member agencies on the meeting minutes? Okay. Any comments from the public on the meeting minutes? September 8th meeting minutes. Okay, hearing none, seeing no hands raised, we'll proceed to vote on the minutes. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay, right on to item number 4. That is a presentation on sustainable management criteria for degraded water quality, and then also a review of the interim milestones. And I think that's you, Phyllis. Take it away.
It is. Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks very much for attending this special meeting today. Let's see if I can get the slideshow going here. Whoops. Does not know. Let me do this and hang on a second. I'm going to go backwards for a second here. Okay, a little technical difficulty on my part. Sorry for that delay.
Let the record show that Chad Tinkin is now here from MID as well, please.
Great. Okay, let's see if this will work a little bit better. Okay, I'm going to just leave this in the mode. Thank you very much for attending. I'm going to try to set up a slideshow here. See if this works a little better. There we go. Thank you. Okay. As Eric had just mentioned, we're going to take on 2 topics today. And I wanted to say something real quickly. I have made a couple of very minor edits. I've added a couple of words here and there in these slides. So if you're looking at the version that you downloaded from the web, you might see a couple of little changes, but they're very minor. So I just wanted to alert you to that. The 2 topics that we're going to talk about today are the sustainable management criteria for degraded water quality. Some of this is a little bit of a review, but most of it is new. And this is the last sustainability indicator that we're assigning sustainable management criteria for. And so we'll be talking about our recommended technical approach and the approach that we have been working on with the TAC planning group. And then our second topic today is a review, but I did have some additional information with respect to how it might be implemented. We talked about interim milestones at the last meeting, and there were some stakeholder comments and very good comments, and so I wanted to address those in the meeting today. So let's get started first with the sustainable management criteria for degraded water quality. And I always like to start with this guidance document from Stanford and Water in the West, because it really, from my point of view, it provides the clearest interpretation of the SGMA regulations with respect to this indicator. In particular, it does point out that the California legislature has designated other agencies, including the State Water Resources Control Board and the Regional Water Quality Control Board, as the principal state agencies with responsibility for groundwater quality. So the GSAs are not taking over that role, as pointed out by that guidance document. That role is being assigned to others. But there is a requirement that we work with them. Also, the document points out, as does SGMA, and this applies to all of the sustainability indicators, that the GSAs are not responsible for fixing undesirable results that might have occurred previously and not corrected by January 1st, 2015. So it isn't that we have to take on the responsibility for sort of cleaning up the basin, as it were, with respect to water quality, with respect to the historical information. We just have to move forward, tracking, characterizing, and making sure that we aren't making it worse by our management actions. The document also recommends that we confer with these regulatory agencies on any water quality and desirable results. And that process certainly allows us to assess our potential impacts on water quality and then work with the agencies on any potential impacts. In particular, we've talked about this before, the GSAs are clearly responsible for making sure that their projects and management actions within the GSP do not have any impacts on water quality, and that we're required to assess that and manage that as we go. If adverse impacts do occur from GSA actions, then the GSA should coordinate with the water quality agencies regarding options to avoid or mitigate any water quality problems. In addition to this information, which we've reviewed in the past, we're getting some additional guidance with respect to review of both the DWR corrective action letters that have come out for some of the critically overdrafted basins. And in particular, most recently in August, the State Water Resources Control Board has provided a series of comment letters on the currently critically overdrafted basin GSPs. And those two items sort of combined for a variety of basins in the San Joaquin Valley in particular, give us some insight as to how the state agencies are actually interpreting the regulations. In particular, one of the corrective action letters specifically is concerned that water quality deficiencies may actually preclude DWR approval. So the regulatory agency, the review agency, DWR, and the State Water Resources Control Board are more broadly interpreting the SGMA regulations than we had previously been thinking in our work in these local subbasins. So in particular, the letters sort of collectively point out that the GSAs have authority to regulate groundwater levels and extractions, and recognizing that the management of groundwater levels and extractions could have potential impacts on water quality. You might think of this as if water levels are lowered such that deeper aquifers provide more water into a well, and if deeper aquifers water quality is different than the shallower aquifer water quality, then you would get more contribution from any constituents in those deeper aquifers. So this sort of provides a better and a clearer understanding that that DWR and the State Water Resources Control Board anticipates that not only projects and management actions will be part of this analysis, but also anything that is within the GSA's control. Again, being primarily groundwater levels and extractions. Extractions in particular have been noted in the regulations that they could potentially spread contaminants within the aquifer system. And I love this phrase that this comes from our DWR point of contact, Amanda, who's been very generous with her time and providing some additional guidance as we've been going forward through the GSP. And in particular, she recommends having a clear crosswalk between GSA management and between the between GSA management, GSA activities, and the primary water quality agencies. This is, I think, what the Stanford in the West document is trying to say when they talk about the confer and coordinate with the primary agencies responsible for water quality. The other thing that is directly quoted in the DWR letter is that the GSAs may leverage existing programs that collect and disseminate water quality data and information. And we certainly want to do that in this subbasin because there are so many data points already established historically. So we can build on that historical information by adopting and incorporating the monitoring programs that are already in place. And then another thing that was a little bit different was the clear recommendation that monitoring of all constituents of concern be conducted. And I think referenced in that constituents of concern is these anything that exceeds the maximum contaminant levels or MCLs for drinking water should certainly be considered. And then the State Water Resources Control Board uses the word widespread. So the concept again that Sigma continually provides guidance on is, one concentration in one well may not rise to the level of an undesirable result. So with those things in mind, I thought I would take just a moment to quickly review what's been done in our subbasin to date. As you may recall, we have a Microsoft Access database that has a large number, 28,000 or so water quality records for almost 1,400 wells in the subbasin for a variety of constituents. And it covers our historical and current study periods that we've been looking at for other constituents in the subbasin. And from that work, we identified 9 potential constituents of concern. And the list that we had for potential constituents of concern was really put together from a variety of sources, not just the data, but also the GSA member agencies have widespread expertise in the subbasin with respect to water quality issues that they've been managing. So we were able to leverage their expertise on that. Our technical team provided some local knowledge and especially our knowledge in adjacent subbasins. And then the stakeholders were also participating in those public meetings. These were very early on when we were first looking at the data, and they had local experience for potential constituents of concern as well. So we put together this list of 9 potential constituents of concern. I'm going to just pop through those real quickly, and we'll say a couple more things about them at the end here. So they include arsenic, boron, dichloro, I knew I would miss this, dibromachloropropane, DBCP, nitrate, tetrachloroethylene, PCE, mostly from legacy dry cleaner activities, total dissolved solids, 1,2,3-TCP, uranium, and gross alpha. With respect to 2 of these 9 potential constituents of concern, I have a little note after them, the first being boron. So we recognize that boron wasn't a drinking water contaminant. It doesn't have an MCL, but it is often associated with, if concentrations are elevated, it's associated with poor crop yield and sometimes damage to crops. And because the subbasin is a predominantly agricultural subbasin, we wanted to make sure that we didn't have boron issues. There were only one small area of elevated concentrations of few wells, and more recent data were very, very low, even below the notification levels. And as a result of that, it seems that boron is not really an issue here, and probably doesn't rise to the level of being a widespread constituent of concern. So we are recommending that that be dropped from the list of 9 potential constituents of concern. And then also with respect to gross alpha, I have a note at the bottom there. The city of Modesto has provided us a tremendous amount of information and data, which we really appreciate being able to coordinate with them and their expertise. A review of some of their historical water quality data and well issues show that uranium and gross alpha generally occur together, although uranium is a bit more widespread. But when we have wells that have exceeded MCLs for uranium, they also typically have gross alpha component as well. So we can look at those 2 very related constituents, I think, together, using uranium as a surrogate for the larger problem, and incorporate gross alpha into that analysis. And so as a result of that, that sort of brings our list of 9 potential constituents of concern down to 7. And so thinking about those 7 constituents of concern within the subbasin, we wanted to see what sort of monitoring programs were already in place with respect to these constituents throughout the subbasin. And we've downloaded data, publicly available data for water year 2020, and that's what is represented on this map. And what you see by all of the various symbols and dots that are on this subbasin map represent wells that have historical information for each of the 7 constituents of concern. It's hard to see with all of the scales that you're always looking at PowerPoint, but there are actually over 300 wells that are sampled in this water year 2020 timeframe for our 7 constituents of concern. And just because it's difficult to see the numbers that are on this display, you can zoom in later if you'd like. I've provided the numbers there for each constituent of concern, but each of the 7, I think, are well represented. There is a focus of monitoring in the western subbasin compared to the eastern subbasin, but that's primarily because those are where the drinking water wells are. You can see that there's also a concentration around Oakdale and Waterford and a few other areas in the western subbasin as well. So we think we have good coverage with respect to drinking water wells. Again, leveraging these existing data. And just as a comment, these data have been downloaded from essentially 3 primary sources. The State Water Resources Control Board maintains the GeoTracker website, and the Division of Drinking Water has the drinking water data posted on the GeoTracker website, as well as the contamination sites within the subbasin. So GeoTracker is an excellent source. Also, the GAMMA program, which links very closely with Division of Drinking Water analysis, they have a large database as well. And the GAMMA website is the GAMMA maps, so to speak, are actually on the GeoTracker website as well. So it's sort of a combined database available there. And then the water quality coalitions provide a third source of water quality data for the subbasin. And I'd like to say a few words about those data on this next slide. The Eastern San Joaquin Water Quality Coalition is the primary water quality coalition that has provided us data and information. You can see from this is a map of some of their monitoring programs. It includes trend analysis and on-time monitoring, primarily for nitrate on this particular map, but there's other constituents as well. And the Water Quality Coalition data covers the entire Modesto subbasin, as well as some adjacent subbasins as shown on the map to the right there. And there's close coordination with the Valley Water Collaborative. You might recall that Perry Clausen provided an update and a summary to this TAC some months ago with respect to the Valley Water Collaborative's initiatives and their data and their process. It's essentially a nonprofit that operates the Modesto Management Area, which is associated with the Irrigated Lands Regulatory Program under the Regional Board. And that provides TDS and nitrate database for the Modesto Subbasin. Just as a comment, those data have already been accessed and used in the GSP process for the water quality characterization. The data goes back to 1940s for some wells. We used data through 2014 for the water quality characterization in the GSP with some updates, and then even more updates are now available. So we can continually pull from these water quality coalitions database going forward. Also, the implementation of CV salts and the nitrate control program. All these programs are very closely related, and I'm sure many of you participate in them and perhaps even know a lot more about them than I do, but I know that they are ongoing. In particular, the nitrate control program is very active with respect to the Modesto Subbasin. It's one of their priority management areas. And there's both data collection and mitigation for impacts. In particular, the nitrate control program is looking for impacts to water quality. They are also beholden to best management practices for nitrogen fertilizer application. And so a lot of these are legacy issues that we are dealing with from the past, and we are continuing to, again, improve the situation so that we're not continually overloading nitrogen into the basin, and in the meantime are looking to also mitigate and providing safe drinking water for any domestic well or any local well that has been impacted already by the nitrate concentrations in groundwater. So number one, there's a lot of data available. Number two, I think it's reasonable to leverage that information and pull that together. And number three, it expands a bit from what we had originally been thinking about, which was just local project water quality monitoring over time. And so putting all of that together, I have provided a sort of technical recommendation for an undesirable result, minimum threshold, and measurable objective definitions for this Modesto Subbasin. I want to point out that this is consistent with what's being done in the Turlock Subbasin, what they're moving forward with there. And in the Turlock Subbasin in particular, they also struggled with going through a series of iterations of sustainable management criteria and continuing to expand how they were going to approach it. And a shout out to Amanda Peisterby, our point of contact, who even participated with the GSA managers on a conference call and provided some insights and information for the GSAs to consider going forward. So we would be consistent with the Turlock Subbasin if we adopted something similar to what I've provided here. So let's go through this very quickly. So the top portion of this little table is the definition of undesirable result. That's just one sentence there, so let's break it down for a bit. The sentence reads that undesirable results are defined as significant and unreasonable adverse impacts to groundwater quality, as indicated by a new first-time exceedance of an MCL for a constituent of concern that is caused by GSA projects, management actions, and importantly, we've added or management of groundwater levels or extractions, such that beneficial uses are affected and well owners experience an increase in operational costs. The reason for the qualification about well owner impacts is that we all recognize that sometimes an exceedance, again, of one constituent in one well in a one-time event does not rise to the level of undesirable results. But if the homeowner actually has elevated MCL such that the drinking water is impacted, then of course they would be impacted with operational costs. Public water suppliers, same thing. Many of our public water suppliers actually have wellhead treatment, so a new exceedance of a constituent of concern in a well that's already being treated might not rise to the level of undesirable results. Nonetheless, all of this will be evaluated and provided to stakeholders in the public so that everyone will see a transparent process of how the GSAs are evaluating it. The minimum threshold definition and measurable objective definitions are provided in the lower portion of this table. Minimum thresholds are set as the primary or secondary California maximum contaminant level for each of the constituents of concern. Measurable objectives are set at the historical maximum concentration for each constituent of concern. Again, for each principal aquifer at each representative monitoring site. So generally what this means is the GSAs are committing to, number one, analyzing groundwater quality on an ongoing basis, characterizing any indications that some of the water quality in the groundwater system might be being degraded, and commit to working with the primary responsible agencies to develop and coordinate with a way to either look at options for reducing those impacts or some other method of managing them. One of the things that the TAC planning group had requested from the technical team is that we provide stakeholders with a sort of stepwise process of how the technical approach might actually work with respect to the undesirable results analysis. So my last slide on this topic goes through those steps, and then we can return back to this and handle any questions that anyone might have. So let's just move to this slide, which I've titled The Technical Approach to this Undesirable Results Analysis. So obviously the first step is to download the water quality data annually for constituents of concern from the 3 primary online website sources that we discussed previously. And to identify, using those data from the 300 or so wells, which wells, if any, have first-time exceedance of a minimum threshold. Again, reminding ourselves that the minimum threshold is set as the primary or the secondary MCL for these constituents of concern. And then determine if that exceedance is related to GSA activities. And this is the part that's a little tricky because it does involve a hydrogeological analysis, and that analysis can't quite be cookbooked because it's going to need to consider a variety of conditions within the aquifer system. But in general, you can look at it as a water level evaluation. And the things that the technical people will ask themselves for this evaluation are things like, have water levels declined in these areas of exceedances? Or are they higher than they've been historically in this area? What are they compared to historical conditions, and how do they best represent that linkage between water quality and water levels? We would want to see if concentrations are increasing in that principal aquifer in nearby wells and or in other areas, and if that too can be linked to changes in water levels. We would ask ourselves, can local concentrations be correlated to water levels for the affected principal aquifers? In other words, that's really where we're trying to get to, is the linkage between how we are managing water levels and whether or not that has impacted or has the potential to have an ongoing impact to water quality. And then also recognizing that we need to determine whether or not beneficial uses and operational costs have been adversely affected as well. With respect to water extractions, that evaluation again is thought more along the lines of spreading contaminants. So we would want to sort of begin our evaluation with thinking in terms of how the constituents of concern could potentially be induced to migrate faster and further within the aquifer system than would have normally occurred. And then whether or not beneficial uses and operational costs, again, have been adversely impacted from the groundwater extraction process. It doesn't mean that you have to stop pumping. I want to stop and just say that bluntly. It means that there needs to be a process in place whereby the GSAs recognize that this is occurring, catch it as early as possible, and then work with the water quality regulatory agencies to come up with options to and mitigations to make sure that the problems can be arrested. And then also with GSA projects, clearly that's always been very clear, I think, to all of us in the regs that we need to, excuse me, I'm so sorry, I'm turning the phone off. I didn't think it would ring. With respect to the projects, I think CEQA will handle some of this, and anything that CEQA doesn't cover, then the GSAs would commit to covering with respect to making sure that projects do not have an impact on the degradation of water quality. Lost my cursor there. And then finally, including all of these analyses in annual reports will be required, as well as if adverse water quality impacts have occurred, the GSAs commit to conferring and coordinating with the water quality agencies. That's that process of crosswalk. Again, one of those phrases that I like because it kind of helps remember what we're doing here. We're working with the primary regulatory water quality agencies. So that is this presentation, and now is possibly a good time to stop and see what questions or comments you might have with respect to the degraded water quality indicator. And I'm going to pop back to the slide before that because I think that the questions might be best answered through this.
Yeah, thanks, Phyllis. From my perspective, I think it's a good approach. We don't want to get ourselves in a situation where we have to, we're managing water quality, but I think our requirements are really to monitor and coordinate, and that's what we're planning to do through that approach. So I think that's good. So at this point, we'll open it up to member agencies for comment, questions.
And I think you're right, Eric. I think this approach is within the lines of what we're supposed to be doing, and I think it checks the right boxes. So yeah, we're on the right track, I think.
Okay. Well, at this point, I'm not hearing anything else from the member agencies. Let's open it up to the public. Any comment or questions from the public? Perfect. Valerie, that's who we wanted to hear from. Valerie represents OID. She's legal counsel for OID on this issue. So we look forward to hearing from you, Val.
Hey, all right. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Great. Yeah, no, I agree. I think, especially with all the discussion and everything Phyllis went over with the state water board letters, this is the right direction. I just had one question, and I think it's kind of a technicality, but when we say a new or first time, are we really zeroing in on further degradation to an existing MCL? And what I mean by that is I could read first time to say if an MCL is already violated, there could be no undesirable results. And I don't think that's what we mean. So I think we should, with the one caveat of maybe working on that language to talk about like a new degradation rather than a new exceedance or a first time exceedance. But I want to make sure that Phyllis is on board with that's the right way to think about it. If she has any clarifying thoughts on that, I'd love to hear it.
Yeah, I added the words first time because to me that is more along the lines of the spread. I think that as we, there's no way to do this analysis without looking at the historical information associated with the wells at the same time, the other wells at the same time. And so it isn't as if the whole analysis is going to focus just on one well or one first time exceedance. It will always be in concert with the other data. And then I also just want to point out that, Valerie, one of the things that I tried to do also to incorporate what I think you're asking about, because there's a couple of ways to think about new. So it's new would be the first time in a well. In other words, that well had never, let's pick on arsenic. That well had never seen an exceedance of an MCL for arsenic in its historical data, and now it does. And so that's really what the new exceedance that I've been thinking of would be the most, the most important. You certainly could have a new exceedance in a well that has exceeded it in the past and then went down and then went up again. I think that I'm not excluding that. And in particular, the measurable objective sort of covers that as well. When we have a measurable objective, we're setting that as the historical maximum concentration for that constituent in each principal aquifer at each monitoring network. So I think the undesirable result definition and the measurable objective collectively cover both one well's first time MCL exceedance and also a well that has had exceedances in the past and then perhaps went some period of time without exceedances and then had another exceedance again. Does that help a bit with what I think I'm understanding with respect to new or first time?
Yeah, I think we're on the same page. There is a third, as always, things are more complicated. There's always a third category of a well has exceeded previously. It doesn't go back up, but it just continues to exceed. And I guess that's where I'm thinking if you've got a well and let's say the MCL is 3 and it's exceeding that, but it never goes above 3 again, but it continues to travel downward. I think it's that concept I'm thinking of, which is continued degradation or a new after 2015 degradation. I think we're speaking the same language. It's just, I would hate for someone to misunderstand first time and say there's a well that's been in a degrading state. And because it's not a first time degradation, you guys are going to not include it. I don't think that's the case, but I don't want someone to misunderstand that.
Yeah, thank you. I was trying to cover those bookends with both the MT and the MO.
Yeah.
So essentially, if it's already exceeded the MCL, and if it continues to get worse, we're monitoring for that too, and we're coordinating on that situation as well.
Yes.
Right, Valerie? Yeah. Okay.
Hey, Phyllis, this is Mike with the City of Waterford. My question is, the state of California has the ability to lower the threshold for MCLs. How do, well was within a certain, the contaminant didn't rate to the point where we're out of compliance, but now all of a sudden we are out of compliance. Does that come into play with this?
I have to admit, I haven't thought that through, Mike, but my sense is that the way that we are defining the minimum threshold, we're defining as the maximum contaminant level. So if the level changes in the future, then going forward, that would be something that we would have to consider. I don't think you can go back in time and go, oh wow, now we had undesirable results 3 years ago and we didn't know it, kind of thing. Does that make sense? Maybe I'm not answering the question, Mike.
No, absolutely makes sense. I just don't know. I mean, groundwater quality could be improving, but then the state of California lowers the MCL, and therefore we are out of compliance. And that's the thing. When we, I think it was 50 to 10 on arsenic. We went from no one had any issues with it to a lot of people had issues with it, and that's where my concern is that as they continue to refine or define what they want to set as an MCL, it becomes our problem.
I think it becomes all of our problems.
Exactly.
Yeah. And I'm not sure what we do about that. I think we have to deal with that when it happens.
Okay, I'm not seeing any other hand raised or chat or anything, so if you want, maybe we'll move on, and if things come up at the end, then we can always circle back to this.
Yeah, that sounds great. Thanks very much. Let's move on to the review of interim milestone, of the technical approach to that. And I just want to spend a minute before we move on to this next slide. I've included the little graph there that we've seen many times. And so even though it's small, I think you'll be able to remember that the Sigma process does allow for interim milestones to be designated that are below the minimum threshold, recognizing that the aquifer may not respond, even if you started projects on day one, which we want to get going on right away. But even if you started it on day one, there's a time that is required for the aquifer to actually respond. You know, we have the declines that have propagated across the portions of the subbasin that have taken decades to manifest themselves. And so they won't go away immediately. And because of the relatively slower than instantaneous response of the aquifer system, we need to give ourselves the opportunity to let our projects work. And in the meantime, to recognize that projects are ongoing and that we are not just completely, not managing our groundwater basin, but that we do recognize that declines will likely occur. And in particular, I don't think we went through the drought of record and we learned a lot about our undesirable results from, 2013 through 2016 or so. And then we're right back into drought conditions again. And so we need to think forward with respect to what that might look like and plan for that. And in particular, we've referred to this because DWR has as a glide path for moving towards sustainable groundwater management. But there were some comments at our last meeting and some concerns, I think, valid concerns that so we're just going to give everybody a buy for the first 5 years. And that's really not what we're doing at all. So I wanted to review quickly the interim milestones approach and then also consider additional requirements and portions of the GSP that are also going to link to and be associated with this issue. So just a review quickly of our methodology that we used. We developed in particular a 2027 interim milestone that allowed wells to be below the MT. And we used, to do this, we used our CASGEM wells in OID and the non-district east management areas, primarily because those were the areas of the largest declines, and also because those CASGEM wells provided very valuable historical information so that we could look at how the area had declined, what the rates of declines were, and how much that occurred. We recognize that water levels in these areas could continue to decline, and so the GSP needs to recognize that as well. It could affect a relatively wide area, and so we looked at a relatively wide area for the interim milestone approach. So for the approach, we actually did something I think is incredibly conservative. We said we're just going to continue to decline. We're going to see drought conditions. It's not going to rain. We're going to see 5 more years of these drought conditions. And if needed, we're going to assume that our glide path may land us at that location. And if that occurs, what would that look like? We added the total groundwater elevation decline from fall 2013 to fall 2020, 7 years. We took that rate of decline and simply tacked it on to the end of the fall 2020 data to define the interim milestone. And we did that as a test to see, again, kind of where that landed. The interesting result is that the declines had not been that significant over most of the area, only about 13 feet in 7 of those 9 wells that we looked at. There were 2 wells that are more central to the non-district east area. And as everyone knows, we've talked a lot about this, that the non-district east area is reliant almost solely on groundwater for water supply. And as a result of that, they have the largest declines. There were 2 wells there that this methodology assigned a 36 feet of additional decline in 2 of those wells based on historical information. But even though those 2 wells have a relatively large interim milestone coming out of this methodology, I do want to just make some points. So first of all, interim milestones cannot be used to defer implementation of projects and management actions. So that's just number one. We're not going to say, well, you know, we're just going to look and monitor and evaluate in 5 years, and then maybe at the end of 5 years we'll be, you know, doing something. No, we're going to be aggressive right out of the box. And the assignment of an interim milestone is really just a declaration of what is so. And it's a conservative assumption, but it's not going to be something that we're just going to let happen and not do anything else. We're going to continue to implement the GSP process. And there'll be a requirement to show that we will do that, because there's an implementation plan required in the GSP, and that implementation plan is required to show the timing and management actions and when projects will occur and when they will be triggered. Essentially, many of those projects are triggered now from our overdraft conditions. The criteria that would trigger implementation of each project must be documented in the implementation plan. So I think this provides some reassurance to those who were concerned that the interim milestones might be used as just a way to continue to decline. It really isn't being used as that, I don't believe, in this GSP. The implementation plan also will have to identify projects and management actions that must be initiated immediately in order to achieve the sustainability goal. We're going to be graded in 5 years as to how we're achieving the sustainability goal. So we can't wait 5 years to start moving forward, because, you know, I think anyone would see that nothing is occurring. So, so I just wanted to make sure that we all were aware that just because there are 2 wells that have a relatively large decline, it isn't just a buy with respect to we're not going to do anything there. We're just going to sort of wait and see. There's an additional backstop too, and that is the backstop that we have that is a management actions to reduce groundwater demand where needed. That management action is being implemented in the modeling now. So we have projects that we have identified that are being modeled with respect to how well they achieve our sustainability goal. And then if those water supply projects fall short with respect to achieving what we have determined for our sustainable management criteria to avoid undesirable results, then there will need to be demands in place. This is going to be again initiated if projects cannot be implemented and or the aquifer response is not sufficient to meet the GSP criteria. It's going to be in targeted areas. I know people have asked in it, you know, well, are we going to do this basin wide, or are we going to do this in specific areas? And the answer is it really is best to optimize. That's the best use of your financial resources in the basin, is to optimize to you know, solve the problem where the largest declines have occurred. And then there is additional authority to the GSAs under SGMA to continue to limit extractions if needed. So we have a backstop on the backstop, so to speak. We have an implementation plan. We have a management action to reduce groundwater demand when needed. And then we also have GSP authority under Sigma to limit extractions in the future even further if the goals are clearly not going to be achieved. So I'm hoping that this information provides some of the reassurance that stakeholders were very concerned about with respect to implementing interim milestones in the process. And then just a quick summary slide to end up before we take some questions on this. We're essentially showing the glide path very similar to what this conceptual diagram that DWR put together indicates. We begin with our 2027 interim milestone before the project benefits can be observed, perhaps, and assuming continued drought conditions. That 2027 interim milestone is the only one below the MT. And then the 2032 interim milestone is the MT. The 2037, we're at least, should be at least halfway there to the measurable objective by that time. So that's the glide path that's proposed, and the backstops that I hope will, link with the interim milestones to make sure that we don't see undesirable results as we get into GSP implementation. So Eric, I'll ask you to help me with questions here.
Yeah, I think that last slide was probably the most important part. We had some questions on that last meeting, and rightfully so. Do nothing is obviously not an option. So we need to get those projects done, and they need to be done in the right place, which is, like you said, non-district east. And if they don't, if there's nothing that's done over there, then we've got backstop, and that is the management action of cutting back or assessing a fee or whatever that is. So we'll have to talk about that more as we move forward as well. With that, other member agencies have any comments on this? This is a recap from last meeting, but a little more detail to address some of the concerns last time. Okay, members of the public, let's open it up to the public. Any comments, questions from the public?
We have a question in the Q&A box from Andy Taylor. Has a draft implementation plan been generated and is available for public review?
No, not yet, Andy. That's in progress. So we are doing right now the modeling of the projects, and that had some hiccups, and so it's not quite ready. But we anticipate providing the results of that modeling to the public in October, likely at the first regular TAC meeting in October, pending getting all of the I's dotted and T's crossed for this modeling effort. At that time, we will have a better understanding of the benefits of the projects and how best to bring them online. So the implementation plan is best developed after the projects are have all been analyzed, prioritized, and then the process of thinking about what's involved, what permitting, what infrastructure, what financial resources would be required for each, and then laying that out systematically so that we can get the most important projects in place as quickly as possible.
Okay, any other questions, comments on interim milestones from the public?
Andy has a follow-up question. Where can I find a list of those projects?
I think that that's a very good question. I think I'm going to stop sharing my screen for a second and see if I can. We did review the list of projects that are being analyzed in a previous meeting. And if you guys want to talk among yourselves for just a second here, I'm going to see if I can give you a date that you can go to the calendar, Andy, and pull down that list of projects.
Yeah, with that date, it should be able to go to the STRGBA GSA website and pull up that presentation, I think.
Yes. Maybe if there are other questions while I'm taking everybody's time to look this up quickly. It was in the modeling results that had been discussed for. There's one of them. Let's see what these goals look like, and these project lists look like. No, okay, I'm not finding it right away, but I'm going to, Andy, if we have your email, and Jennifer, if you can work with me, I'm going to send this information to him right after this workshop is over, if he would let me do that. Any other questions from anyone, Eric?
Yeah, we've got another hand raised from Dennis Wichow. Dennis? You're on mute right now, Dennis. There you got your hand down now, Dennis. Yep, if you just unmute. Dennis still has his hand up, so I'm gonna, if you want to unmute yourself, Dennis, then you're up.
Okay, can you send it to me also?
Yes, absolutely. And I can actually tell you because I found it. So it was, this just goes to show you that I have a very short memory these days. It was our very last meeting. So it was September 8th. And in there, we had some results of our modeling of the initial projects, and there are the list of projects that are being analyzed in various scenarios in that PowerPoint presentation. So if you will look at September the 8th on the website, that meeting some of that was associated with the sustainable yield.
Yeah, so you go to strgba.org, strgba.org, and then go to the meetings tab there, and then there's an agenda there. And if you click on the agenda, then you should be able to scroll down. It's 39 pages in that. What slide was that? Oh, it looks like it's page 15 of 39.
Yes, there's also a list of projects on PDF page 5 in that PowerPoint as well. Oh, I see. You're on the whole agenda package.
Agenda,
You're
so
smarter than
5,
me.
but it's 15 of 39 in that
Yes, thank you.
PDF there.
Yes.
Then there's some more group 3 projects on the following slide after that.
Thank you, Eric.
Yeah, thanks.
Okay. Doesn't look like, I see no other hands raised. I don't see any other chat questions. So yeah, I think we got one last slide, huh?
Next steps, we are continuing to walk and chew gum at the same time and try to get a lot of things done at the same time. Finalizing the project analysis is our largest responsibility right now. That's our big priority, and that's being done. Part of the delay for this is has to do with the fact that our model covers 2 subbasins. And so in the coverage of both Modesto and Turlock, it's so helpful that it does cover both subbasins, because we're able to do a really good job with respect to understanding the boundary conditions associated with the Tuolumne River in particular, but the other rivers as well. And it's just a bigger process than just one subbasin trying to coordinate all of these projects together. But that's being done, and we're QCing results right now. So we should have that in very short order. Additional GSP chapters, the same team that's doing the modeling for the analysis is also the same team that hasn't quite incorporated all of the TAC comments into the water budget chapter, but that's happening very short order. So that will be available on the website very soon, followed by sustainable management criteria. We needed to finish up water quality today, and the TAC will consider that at the next meeting, and then monitoring networks, and then finalizing the management actions. So a lot of things coming our way. And that's it for me.
If you don't mind, can you go back to that slide just real quick? Just leave
Yes,
it on
sure.
the slide for a little
Absolutely.
bit.
Absolutely.
I think it's important that everybody, all the member agencies recognize that we are on a tight timeline. So we, OID, we're planning on, tentatively at least, planning on going to our board for direction, hopefully in November. And so our next GSA meeting, regularly scheduled GSA meeting, will be on the 13th. That's actually the next agenda item. But so everybody, I'm hoping that everybody's going to be in a position to provide direction on these interim milestones, and then also the sustainable management criteria for the degraded water quality, so we can kind of finalize that, or we're getting the chapters written and out so that we can get those reviewed. The monitoring networks, we'll talk about that as well. And then please, if you got to go back to your boards, plan on informing them of this, getting that direction, and then plan on going back to them to get some feedback on adopting the plan ultimately. December, January, we have to do it by January, but we like to leave ourselves a little bit of a buffer from our agency to present it, and then probably have a discussion item in November, come back in December for action if need be.
Hey, Eric, towards that end, I want to remind everybody that Phyllis will be making a presentation on the preparation of the GSP for the Modesto Subbasin next Wednesday at the Water Advisory Committee meeting. So all the Sturgba TAC members and board members will be notified of the meeting. The agenda is going out today, and it'll be via Zoom. Phyllis will, very busy, also be presenting at the same meeting the GSP for the Turlock Basin as well. So there's an opportunity to kind of catch everybody up to, current status and remaining steps. And like you said, in particular in the Modesto Basin, being that we're governed by an MOU, each of the member agencies, individual governing bodies have to take action. And so it's pertinent and imperative that you schedule that, knowing how light your boards may meet and city councils may meet during November, December, January. Pick one or two of those, target it, and work your way toward it. Give yourself some flexibility in case something goes awry, because we cannot miss the January 31, 2022 deadline. Stanislaus County is scheduled to take action in regards to adoption of the plan, with a public hearing presently scheduled for December 7th. And I realize the GSP may be in draft form and, still a work in progress, and it very well will be. And that's okay. We were able to do the same thing with the Eastern San Joaquin Subbasin 2 years ago, and the Delta Mendota as well. So we're closing in on it.
Yep, only a couple months away.
Yep.
Erica, this is Mike with Waterford again. Will there be like a draft staff report or draft PowerPoint presentation and so forth that can be shared with us, that we can then have kind of a consistent approach as to we approach our electeds?
I don't think we planned on that, have we, Phyllis? But I know ahead.
Yes, I mean, some of that is being put together now for the Water Advisory Committee, and
Yeah,
I think that
yeah.
they will be, I mean, we've had so many meetings, and same thing in Turlock, just a year of meetings, and people's heads are spinning around. It's like, what all have we done? And so it's just really nice to kind of pull, and I think the Water Advisory Committee is the first opportunity really to pull everything kind of tightly into one. How does this relate to something else? I think it's one of the things that we've done is, we look at this particular thing and then this thing and this thing, the basin setting, the budgets, the projected water budgets, and how does all of that work together and fit together with the sustainable management criteria and the plan? And so some of that, Mike, I think will be in this PowerPoint that we're putting together for next week. And we can build on that as we get project modeling finished. And yeah, here we go.
Yeah, I was going to say, I was going to pull from the previous agendas, and I'll probably start with your presentation here coming up, because it'll be a good summary. But I think everybody's going to have a little bit different message, or at least some detail that they want to share that may not be on there that they can add to by using previous agendas. So if you don't mind, Phyllis, once you get that finalized, even after the meeting, if you want, because I know you might make some changes up to the end.
And I've got a board report.
Okay. Yeah, that'd be helpful too, Walt, just sending it to the group. But getting the PowerPoint actual file rather than just a PDF from you, Phyllis, would be helpful, if you don't mind.
Of course.
Okay. Any other comments, questions from the member agencies? Okay, comments, questions from the public?
When is the Water Advisory Committee meeting?
Wednesday, September 29th at 10 a.m. Did I get the time right, Walt? I think so.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. No other hands raised. I don't see anybody in the chat.
Sorry, 9 a.m.
Yep.
9 a.m. It's 9 a.m. Wednesday, 29th at 9 a.m.
You there, Walt?
9 a.m.
You have 9 a.m. too, Walt?
That's a very good question, Eric. Thank you.
My internet's unstable. I got kicked out about 90 seconds ago, and it just now let me back in.
Okay.
I was saying in mid-sentence that I do have a board agenda report that I prepared in regards to the GSP.
Yep.
And I could send that to you, Eric, and then you could spread that back out to the group. Mike Pitcock with Waterford was looking for something like that, and he could take it and work it into the format appropriate for city council.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Phyllis, you're okay with us using your slides too? We just have to give you credit, I think, right?
You are
No.
This has absolutely been a very collaborative process. I don't look at this as my work as much as the tax and the sub-basis.
All right.
Together we get the job done.
That's right. Okay, moving on to the next item. I briefly mentioned the next meeting. So we got 3 weeks between now and the next meeting. There's a lot of action items. Please get direction from your board, your committees as necessary to be in a position to take action on those items before that time. So we will plan on having a GSA meeting and a TAC meeting on the 13th, all starting at 1:30 on Zoom. So questions or comments from the member agencies on that? Okay, anything from the public? All right, item number 6, just any items too late for the agenda? Are there any items too late for the agenda? Perfect. Hearing none, seeing no hands up, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn the September 22nd, 2021 STRGA GSA TAC meeting, please.
So moved.
Thanks, Walt.
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All right.
Aye.
Any opposed? Meeting adjourned. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thanks, Phil.